The steak was still bleeding on my plate when she said it. Apologize or leave. Not a scream. Not a plea. Just a verdict. Like I was on trial in my own damn kitchen. The same kitchen I retiled with my own 2 hands when Blake, accidentally, put a chair leg through the floor last Christmas. The same table I built from salvaged walnut the year Dylan graduated and couldn't stop crying because his dad didn't show up, again. I looked around, fork in hand. Dylan was picking at his potatoes like he hadn't heard a word. Blake chuckled, mouth full. Come on, Greg, don't start this rent talk again. You sound like an eviction notice. I didn't laugh. I wasn't joking. 6 months he's been out of college. Drinks my beer. Uses my tools. Doesn't work. Doesn't pay. He has a $1,000 gaming chair in the room I used to read bedtime stories in. And Cheryl looked at me like I was a stranger trying to discipline someone else's dog. You don't talk to my boys like that, she said again, slow and sharp. Apologize or leave. 60 years old. Fought 2 wars. Missed the birth of my nephew to fix a down radar station during a typhoon. Raised these 2 like they were my own when their real dad mailed postcards twice a year and forgot birthdays. I taught Blake how to drive. I stayed up with Dylan when he had that flu that scared us all. I paid for braces, college apps, fender benders. I signed checks in silence. Fixed leaks before anyone noticed they were wet. And now I'm disposable. A guest overstaying his welcome. I looked at Cheryl. Her lips tight. Her eyes glassy but cold. And for the first time in 22 years, I realized she had an exit plan. I just hadn't read the fine print. So I stood up, put the fork down gently on the plate, meat untouched, juice spreading like a crime scene, and I walked toward the sliding glass door. I saw Cheryl's eyebrow twitch, waiting for me to say something, to make it dramatic. But no words, no plea, no door slam, just the slow click of my boots across the tile, the whisper of the screen door, and the sound of them not following. Outside, the wind smelled like burnt leaves and distant rain. I walked to the truck, got in, and started the engine. It was quieter than I expected, like the world had already moved on. I didn't take a suitcase, didn't pack a bag, because you don't pack when you're not leaving. You just go. The driver's seat creaked under me like it remembered more than it should. Same truck I used to haul Blake's first bike when he cried because it had the wrong color spokes. Same truck that carried Cheryl's mom to her dialysis appointments after her stroke. Same truck I drove to every hardware store within 50 miles trying to find the exact tile Cheryl wanted for the upstairs bathroom, because cream and ivory are apparently not the same thing. I parked it by the lake. The one with the crooked dock and the broken bench we never fixed. The one where I taught both boys how to bait a hook, even when they were too squeamish to touch the worms. Blake caught his first bluegill here. Dylan cried when we had to toss his back. I stayed up nights sanding new rods, watching YouTube videos on casting techniques just to keep their attention when they started preferring iPads to fishing lines. Now the lake was quiet. Still, like it was waiting for me to say something. But I had nothing left to say. I leaned the seat back, folded my arms, and stared at the roof of the cab. Above me, old receipts fluttered from the visor. One from a gas station just outside Wichita where Blake threw up chili dogs in the back seat. One from a roadside diner Cheryl swore had the worst eggs in human history, but she finished the whole plate anyway. I could have gone to a hotel, had the cash, but that would have felt like checking into a punishment. And this wasn't punishment. This was clarity. I let the engine idle for a while. Not sure why. Maybe to pretend I still had somewhere to be. Maybe because silence felt like surrender. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Cheryl, folding her napkin like she was tidying up the scene of a crime. Blake smirking. Dylan avoiding eye contact like a coward dressed in loyalty. My ribs felt tight, like someone had cinched a belt around my chest and forgot the buckle. I wasn't angry. That was the worst part. Anger would have made sense, given me fuel. But all I felt was this dull, heavy absence. Like my name had been erased from their story, and I'd only now noticed the blank page. At 5:42 a.m., a squirrel jumped on the hood. Scared the hell out of me. I laughed. First real laugh since the night before. Short. Bitter. I watched it stare at me for a beat before scurrying away. Then I put the truck in gear. Didn't look back. Didn't check the mirror. Didn't touch my phone. North felt like the only direction that wasn't backwards. And the farther I drove, the more it hit me. I didn't leave defeated. I left because it was the first time I realized I was the only one who ever stayed. Cheryl didn't even look up from her phone that night. When I walked out, she thought it was one of my little cooling-off walks, like I was some moody retriever who needed to sniff trees until I calmed down. She put her fork down, wiped the corner of her mouth, and said, "He'll be back once he realizes he overreacted." Matter of fact, like I was just taking out the trash and got lost on the way back. Blake laughed. "He'll crawl back by Friday. He always does." Dylan didn't say anything, just refilled his glass. Eyes on the fridge, like the conversation was an awkward TV rerun he'd already seen too many times. The audacity. See, this is what happens when you teach people that dependability is just your default. They mistake it for obedience. Monday morning came. My side of the bed was still untouched. Cheryl made it without a second thought, tight hospital corners, like she was erasing evidence. Tuesday, she called the shop. Linda, my part-time bookkeeper, answered. "Nope, haven't seen him. Is everything all right?" Of course, Cheryl lied. Just forgot where he said he'd be today. She didn't mention the dinner. The ultimatum. The sound of a man choosing silence over servitude. By Wednesday, Blake had commandeered my recliner, feet up, controller in hand, mouth full of chips. "Maybe you just needed a break from your nagging," he muttered, not even looking at his mother. Cheryl didn't correct him. She was too busy checking her phone. Again and again. Thursday afternoon, she called my brother in Arizona. "Is Greg with you?" A pause. Then, "Should he be?" She didn't answer that. By Friday, the air was different. Stale. The silence wasn't quiet anymore. It had started to buzz. To echo. She opened the garage and looked at the corner where I kept my toolbox. Gone. That's when she noticed the dust. I hadn't just left. I'd removed things. Carefully. Intentionally. No mess. No anger. Just absence. She called the hospitals next. Gave them my name. Then the sheriff's department. Nothing. No accidents reported. No John Does. No missing person report, because she still wasn't ready to admit I was missing. That would make it real. Friday night, Dylan came home to find her at the dining table, staring at her phone like it owed her answers. Still nothing. She didn't respond. He walked to the fridge, pulled out a beer, twisted the cap, and said, "You really think he just bailed over rent?" She blinked, looked at him like he was a stranger. "It wasn't about rent," she said quietly. It wasn't. But she didn't know what it was about, because she had never really listened. Greg was the noise behind the scenes. The working parts. The shadow you assume is the wall until it's gone and you realize it held up everything. Saturday morning, she checked my location history. It hadn't updated since the moment I walked out. She tried calling again. Straight to voicemail. She left a message. "Greg, enough is enough. Come home." She didn't delete it afterward. She listened to it again. And that was the first crack in her voice. Because it was the first time she realized. I wasn't bluffing. I was gone. The town wasn't on the way to anything. You had to mean to get there. A stretch of broken blacktop that led to a single gas station, one bar that still sold cigarettes behind the counter, and a mechanic's garage that hadn't changed its signage since 1984. Perfect. I parked across the street and stared at the rusted sign swaying in the wind, AL's Repair and Welding. My father used to bring me here in the summers when I was 10. I remember the smell of grease and burnt toast, the sound of Hank Williams echoing from a dusty old radio perched on a paint-chipped shelf. AL's gone now. His son, Rudy, runs the place. Slower, quieter, missing half his teeth but still sharp behind the eyes. He didn't ask too many questions when I told him I was looking for a place to stay, just sized me up with one squint and said, "Room upstairs. Cash only. No noise, no guests." "Perfect," I said. He handed me a key that looked like it belonged in a jail cell and turned back to his carburetor without another word. I liked that. The room smelled like WD-40 and old paperbacks. One window. A bed hard enough to reset your spine. A chair that wobbled. A fridge that hummed louder than a jet engine. I unpacked my duffel, 2 shirts, a razor, and a copy of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance I hadn't touched since '98. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel responsible for anyone else's comfort. I kept to myself, fixed what I could. Mrs. Dalton, the widow who ran the bakery, wheeled in a busted walker on day 2. Her hands trembled when she asked if I'd take a look. I didn't ask for money, just nodded, tightened the bolts, cleaned the wheels, greased the hinges. When she came back to pick it up, she left a bag of shortbread and a thermos of coffee next to it. No note, no small talk. It became a rhythm. A retired vet's mower wouldn't start. A kid's BMX had a bent rim. An old man wheeled in a broken fishing reel with more hope than sense. I said little, worked quietly, took payment in the form of sandwiches, apple pie, or just the rare nod of respect that came from men who'd buried too many friends to waste words. No one asked about my past. No one cared about where I came from, or why I limped when it rained, or why I sometimes sat by the shed for hours without moving. I wasn't Greg the stepdad, Greg the fix-it guy, Greg the one who always knows where the duct tape is. I was just G, according to Rudy, who didn't bother remembering full names anymore. I liked that too. The silence here didn't press on my chest like it did in that house. It didn't accuse or echo. It just was. I sat behind the garage most evenings, legs stretched out, coffee in hand, watching the sun melt behind the trees. I didn't turn on my phone, didn't check the news, didn't check the weather. I just waited for the stars to remind me I still existed. I slept better, dreamed less. There was no calendar on the wall, just a clock that ran slow. I didn't fix it. Some things, I've learned, are better when they don't run on someone else's time. Cheryl didn't panic at first. That would have required vulnerability. And Cheryl doesn't do vulnerable. She does controlling. She assumed I'd come crawling back after a few days of cooling off in a motel with bad cable and worse coffee. When a week passed and the silence stayed thick, she went to plan B, appearances. She started small, called her sister in Oregon under the pretense of just checking in. Slipped in a casual, "By the way, you haven't heard from Greg, have you?" "Nope," her sister said, chewing something. "Why?" Cheryl mumbled something about a fishing trip. A spontaneous one. He just needed space. The next day, she called Dan, the guy who ran the local VFW. He hadn't seen me since the Christmas raffle. Same with Bob and Marla, our neighbors who once begged me to fix their furnace at 2 a.m. when Blake was still in diapers. Each call tightened the loop around her neck. She reached out to my old Air Force buddy, Paul, the one I drove 3 states for when his wife died. His voice was flat. "If he wanted you to find him," he said, "you already would have." She hung up mid-sentence. The thing is, Cheryl never realized that while she was busy being the center of the household, I was the infrastructure. I didn't ask for praise. I just made things work. Now, without me, things stopped working. Dylan tried to run laundry and ended up flooding the downstairs bathroom. Blake burned out a circuit trying to fix the Wi-Fi router. They ordered takeout 4 nights in a row until the delivery guy started calling Blake by name and asking if the old man ever coming back. Then came the mortgage payment. Due. No idea where the checkbook was. Then the insurance. The gas bill. The quarterly taxes for the garage. Turns out, Greg the ghost had been the only one keeping the ship from sinking. Cheryl had no login info for the accounts. Couldn't access the books for the shop. Didn't know the alarm code reset itself every Sunday night unless manually overwritten. It went off at 3 a.m. and cops showed up. By the second week, she opened the junk drawer in the kitchen and just stared. That drawer had always looked like chaos to her. Random screws, paper clips, post-its, keys to things no one remembered. To me, it was a system, and it was gone. Every time she tried to piece something together, find a receipt, locate a manual, remember the damn password to the business email, she ran headfirst into the same wall. Greg did that. And Greg wasn't answering his phone. Blake tried. Called once. Left a voicemail. "Hey man, if this is some kind of, lesson or something." "Okay, cool, we get it. But this is getting out of hand." I bet he rehearsed that. I bet he thought it sounded grown. It didn't. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the sudden realization that they had no idea how to function without the man they'd treated like wallpaper. By the 3rd week, Cheryl stood in the garage, staring at the calendar I used to mark oil changes and supplier invoices. She ran her hand over a nail in the wall where my tool belt used to hang. It was small, stupid, but it broke her, because for the first time, she realized. I didn't forget to take it. I chose to leave it behind, because I wanted her to see what the world looks like without the man who never needed a thank you, until now. They used to joke that I was just the wrench guy. Cheryl said it once at a Christmas party, laughing into a glass of boxed Merlot. Greg handles the greasy stuff. I handle the real business. Everyone chuckled. I smiled, poured myself another bourbon and said nothing. But now, without the wrench guy, the business was bleeding out, slow, quiet, and unstoppable. It started with a delay in parts. Cheryl couldn't log into the distributor's dashboard. The password had been saved in my head, nowhere else. She called the rep, got sent a voicemail. Tried emailing. No reply. Turns out when you don't pay invoices on time and don't respond with the order codes exactly right, they stop giving you the courtesy calls. Then came the scheduling. I had a system, an old paper calendar in the back office and a sticky note system that looked like chaos but worked better than any software she ever suggested. Cheryl tried digitizing everything once. Spent $700 on a fancy PS system that we never fully set up. I still have the box somewhere. Now, appointments overlapped. 2 clients showed up at 9 a.m. One left pissed off. Never came back. The next week, a lady called about her Ford Focus that had been sitting in the shop bay untouched for 4 days. She left 3 voicemails. Nobody returned her call. She towed it to another garage, left a 1-star Yelp review. That was the beginning of the exodus. Mr. Reynolds, the old widower with the 78 El Camino, used to bring me lemon bars every Thursday after I rotated his tires. He stopped showing up. Word got around. It turns out clients don't come for the business. They come for the person behind the counter who remembers their name, their dog's name, and that weird squeaking sound their mufflers made since 2016. And me? I was gone. The books? A disaster. Receipts shoved in a shoebox. Cheryl tried hiring a part-time accountant. He quit after a week. Said the ledgers looked like a ransom note written by a raccoon. His words. Payroll bounced once. Then twice. Blake, sweet, delusional Blake, thought he could help out by ordering parts himself. Ended up paying double because he clicked a sponsored ad and bought counterfeit alternators from a drop shipper in Vietnam. 3 refunds later, Cheryl banned him from touching the business computer. Dylan offered to step in too. Got bored on day 2. Said it was too repetitive. I used to get up at 5:30 a.m. every day, drive to the shop, sweep the floors, check the inventory, sharpen the blades on the riding mower I swore we'd replace one day. I knew which clients needed a payment plan and which ones would tip in cash if you fixed the problem fast. I knew which light bulb flickered if the AC kicked on too hard and how to kick the furnace to get it humming again. They didn't know any of that. Didn't want to know. Until now. By the end of the month, we lost 4 long-time clients. Cheryl was making phone calls with that fake sweet voice she only uses when she's scared. Offering discounts. Asking for another chance. No one bid. The air in the shop changed. It was always warm when I was there. Old rock music. Smell of coffee and coolant. Now it smelled like dust and desperation. And every time someone asked, "Where's Greg?" they'd say, "He's taking some time off." But the way Cheryl's voice cracked on the word, "off," you could hear it. They didn't know if I was ever coming back. And more importantly, they were starting to realize I had no reason to. It showed up on a Tuesday. Rain tapping the window like an old friend too ashamed to knock. Rudy left it on the workbench next to a broken toaster someone dropped off the day before. "Mail for G," he said, smirking like it was a joke. Nobody knew my full name in this town, not even Rudy. I didn't correct him. Didn't matter. No return address. No stamp either, which meant someone dropped it off by hand. Someone who didn't want to reply, just a reaction. The envelope was pale pink, cheap stationery, wrinkled at the edges like it had been stuffed in a purse too long. I stared at it for a minute, thought about tossing it straight in the trash. But curiosity's a hell of a drug. I opened it. For words, scrawled in Cheryl's unmistakable, hurried pen. "Come home. You win." No apology. No reflection. No ownership. Just a weak little flare fired into the sky from a sinking ship that never thought it'd take on water. I read it once. Twice. Then I laughed. A dry, Bitter, chest-deep kind of laugh, the kind that tastes like iron. Rudy peeked his head in from the garage, curious. I shook my head and waved him off. He didn't press. I walked behind the shop, to the old burned barrel I dragged out of the weeds the week I arrived. Dropped the envelope in. Struck a match. Watched it curl and blacken, folding on itself like it was ashamed of its own words. 3 weeks. And that's all she could muster. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. Just, you made your point. As if this was some game of chicken and I'd won a trophy instead of decades of silence. I pulled out the beat-up spiral notebook I kept in the drawer next to my bed. The one with oil smudges on the corners and a broken spine. I flipped to a blank page and wrote in block letters. This isn't about a point. It's about how I was never in the picture. Just in the background. Underlined background twice. Closed the book. There was a time I would have clung to that letter like a rope. Shown up with flowers. Apologized for making her uncomfortable. Called the boys and pretended we were all just misunderstood. But that man, Greg the peacemaker, Greg the glue, he stayed behind in that kitchen. What she doesn't understand is, the silence isn't the punishment. It's the freedom she never realized I craved. It started with the lawnmower. Blake ran over a half-buried rope toy the neighbor's dog had left behind. Something snapped. The engine gave one last wheeze and died. He popped the hood, stared down like it might fix itself out of fear. Then he called Dylan. Dylan Googled a YouTube video, watched a guy named Mowerdan 1993 explain carburetors for 17 minutes. Tried to follow along. Ended up covered in oil and grass pulp, bolts scattered like dice on the driveway. Cheryl watched from the porch, arms crossed. You're getting grease on your shirt, she snapped. Blake barked back. Maybe if Greg hadn't vanished, the mower wouldn't be our problem. The silence that followed hit harder than the broken engine. Later that week, the upstairs toilet backed up, overflowed into the hallway. Dylan grabbed a plunger, went at it like he was fighting a burglar. Made it worse. Cheryl screamed when the water crept into the linen closet. They called a plumber. 3 days out. In the meantime, they used the gas station down the street. Blake swore it smelled like old ham and wet carpet. Cheryl refused to go. Dylan nearly got into a fistfight with the attendant after asking for the bathroom key too many times. The water heater quit next. Pilot light dead. Cheryl stood in the basement in her robe, clutching a lighter with shaking hands. She'd seen Greg do it 100 times. She just never bothered to learn how. After 10 minutes, she gave up. Showered in cold water. Cried into a towel. That night, she stood in the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out a screwdriver. She didn't need it. She just needed to feel like she knew what to do with it. The next morning, she knocked over the recycling bin. Bottles clattered across the floor. She bent to pick one up and noticed the thermostat blinking red. The HVAC was failing. Again, she stared at the screen, heart pounding, unable to look away, because she realized something brutal. Greg never let it get this far. She used to tease him for being obsessive, always checking pilot lights, flushing toilets at odd hours, tightening screws no one noticed were loose. She thought he did it because he was bored. No, he did it because that's what a foundation does. It supports things quietly, invisibly, without applause. Until one day, the house creaks a little louder, and you realize the foundation's gone. The mail started piling up. The garage bills. Late notices. The accounts were locked under Greg's passwords, behind Greg's systems, in a world Greg built and never explained. Because no one ever asked. And now? They were locked out of everything, not just the systems, but the rhythm, the peace, the comfort of knowing things just worked. Every squeaky door, every flickering bulb, every slow drain, every small thing they ignored before now screamed the same truth. Greg was the one who made this house livable. Not big, not loud, but indispensable. And now? He was gone. And everything was falling apart. One screw, one silence, one, how did he do that again? At a time. For weeks. 28 days. 672 hours of deliberate quiet. I hadn't powered the phone on once. Left it in the glove box, battery dead, screen cold, like a body waiting for autopsy. I told myself I'd never turn it back on. That I didn't need the noise, the excuses, the drama. But that morning, something shifted. Maybe it was the kid from the welding class who gave me a drawing of me fixing his bike with a big red crayon heart over my face. Maybe it was the smell of maple smoke from Rudy's griddle. Or maybe I just wanted to see if they were still pretending I didn't matter. I held the phone like it might bite me, plugged it in, sat on the shop floor while it blinked itself back to life. When the screen finally lit up, it stuttered under the weight of all of it. 67 missed calls, 31 voicemails, 122 unread texts. I scrolled. Cheryl, 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 Blake, Cheryl, Dylan, unknown, Cheryl. I opened the first voicemail out of morbid curiosity. Blake's voice. Seriously? You've made your point, dude. This is getting pathetic. Grow up and come back. We need you at the garage. Click. Second one. Cheryl. Tired. Irritated. You're being dramatic. This isn't what adults do. You're hurting the boys. Click. Third one. Dylan. Quiet. I know I haven't said much, but, we didn't mean to. You just kinda left, man. I guess. Just call mom. Fourth. Cheryl again. Different tone this time. Shaky. Greg. I was wrong. Please come back. I miss you. The boys miss you. The house doesn't feel right. I don't feel right. Her voice cracked on the word miss. Like it cost her something to say it. I didn't delete it. I saved it. Not because I needed it, but because she did. The texts were a horror show of passive aggression and desperation. One day she'd send, hope you're okay. The next, grow up. A week later, we don't even know where the septic switch is. Then, please, just tell me you're safe. Then, I can't sleep. Then, please, please, I'll do anything. I set the phone down on the workbench. Let it buzz with another call. Let it keep buzzing. I didn't answer. Because here's the thing they never understood. This wasn't about silence anymore. It was about the fact that I had finally found a place where I didn't have to raise my voice just to be seen. So no, I didn't reply. I just let them sit in the same quiet they once weaponized against me. And now? It was screaming at them. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back. No warning. No grand re-entry. No note taped to a windshield. Just drove. The highway felt smaller somehow, like I'd grown and the world hadn't caught up. I didn't bring bags. Just a cup of gas station coffee and the kind of stillness that comes when you finally decided you owe no one a damn thing. Pulled into the driveway like a ghost revisiting the scene of his own murder. Same cracked concrete. Same wind chime missing a note. But the house looked different now. Smaller. Tired. Like it knew it had been exposed. I let myself in. Door still squeaked, always squeaked, but no one had oiled it. Not since me. Inside, it was quiet. Not peaceful. Not welcoming. Just empty. Blake was on the couch in a hoodie, a bowl of cereal in one hand, game controller in the other. He looked up, froze. Mouth slightly open, like he was watching a deer walk into his living room with a crowbar. Greg. I didn't answer. Didn't even blink. Just nodded once, barely, and kept walking. Past the kitchen, where the tile I laid by hand was still chipped from Blake's accidental chair stunt. Past the hall closet where I kept the storm gear they probably didn't even know existed. Down the basement stairs, slow and steady, like I was descending into the bones of a life I'd already buried. The workshop light flickered when I flipped it on. The air smelled like dust, dampness, and neglect. My tool chest was right where I left it, though someone had tried to move it. Sloppy scratches on the floor. Idiots. Didn't even unlock the casters. I opened the drawers. Everything still in order. Metric on the left. Standard on the right. Torque wrenches wrapped in rags like they were sacred. Grabbed the whole chest. Rolled it to the stairs. Next, I took down 3 framed photos from the pegboard. One of Cheryl from our trip to Acadia before the boys. One of the boys fishing with me, smiling like they meant it. And one of my father and me welding sparks behind us, his hand on my shoulder. Lastly, I opened the old army green footlocker under the stairs and lifted out the velvet case with my Air Force medals. Still sealed. Untouched. No one ever asked about them. I looked around the room one last time. Thought about leaving something dramatic. A note. A message. A metaphor. But no, they didn't earn closure. I carried the chest up, one stair at a time. Blake watched from the living room, still frozen, spoon halfway to his mouth. Eyes wide. Silent. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Good. I walked out the front door. Didn't slam it. Didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't a goodbye. It was an inventory. And I had just taken everything that ever belonged to me. She came in through the garage, same as always, fumbling with her keys, muttering about traffic, arms full of plastic grocery bags. Didn't notice at first. The hum of the fridge, the flicker of the overhead light I told her would need replacing months ago, the usual rhythm of a house pretending it still had a pulse. Then she saw it. On the table, my handwriting on the front of the envelope. Neat. Unmistakable. She hadn't seen it in weeks. She dropped the bags. One of them split. Apples rolled across the floor. A jar of pasta sauce burst near the baseboard, red pooling like something out of a crime scene. But she didn't notice. She just stood there, staring at it like it might vanish if she blinked. Eventually, she moved. Sat down slowly, as if the chair might reject her. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside, a check, made out to her. Half the garage's value, cashed out clean. No games. No conditions. Beneath it, the deed to the house. Signed over. No lawyers. No loopholes. And at the bottom, one simple note on lined paper. The kind I used to write grocery lists on when we still pretended to be a team. It read, "You said apologize or leave." I chose to remember who I was before I begged to be seen. No signature. She stared at it. Then again, the check fluttered from her hand. The deed slid to the floor. And Cheryl, who never cried in front of the boys, who once said grief was just drama in slow motion, collapsed in on herself like a building stripped of steel. She slid off the chair. Knees hit the floor. Sobbing. Not the polite, TV version of tears. Not a single, beautiful drop down one cheek. This was ugly crying. The kind you choke on. The kind that sounds like something feral trying to claw its way out of you. Because she finally understood. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't asking for forgiveness. I wasn't even angry anymore. I had just removed myself. Quietly. Completely. And she would never know the exact moment it happened. Only that it was long before dinner. Long before the ultimatum. Long before she thought she had the power to tell me which way the door swung. The shed was no bigger than a two-car garage with warped siding and a tin roof that moaned every time the wind changed its mind. Perfect. I put up a hand-painted sign. Geez, fix it. No frills. No logo. Just truth. Within days, the locals started showing up. First, it was Old Man Rudd with a toaster that hadn't worked since 2011. Then Missy, who ran the diner, brought in a wobbly stool. Then two teenage boys whose lawnmower had eaten a shoelace and shredded itself. I didn't charge at first. Didn't need to. They left pies, jars of pickles, boxes of parts they found in their grandpa's barns. It was more than enough. By week 3, the kids had nicknamed me Mr. G. I let them hang around after school. Taught them how to change oil, strip wires, patch a tire without making it worse. They listened like I was a prophet. Not because I was loud, but because I didn't talk just to hear myself. Some days, we didn't fix anything. We just stood around the workbench and passed around a thermos of root beer, talking about how the world used to be built instead of replaced. At night, I'd lock up and walk down to the lake. Same lake. Same bench. Still crooked. Still mine. I'd sit with my thermos, the real kind this time, black coffee with a little bourbon if the day had been long. The stars out here don't blink behind city smog. They just stare back. Honest. I'd turn off my phone before I even reached the trail. I didn't block Cheryl's number. That would have given her an alert. No, I left her unblocked. I wanted her to speak into the void. Every week, a few voicemails trickled in. Some started formal. "Hi, Greg, just checking in." Then came the guilt. "We were all wrong. We miss you." Then the bargaining. "Please just call." Even once. One ended with silence, followed by a sob. I saved that one. Just to remember what it sounds like when someone learns the value of a person too late. I never replied. Because there's a cruelty deeper than yelling. More surgical than revenge. It's absence. It's taking all the things you used to give freely, your time, your presence, your willingness to explain the same damn thing 3 times because they never listened the first 2, and locking them away. Not behind anger, but peace. I built something here. Something they'll never touch. Never ruin. Never dismiss with a half laugh and an eye roll. I became a story in their house. A cautionary tale. A shadow that used to fix things. And now? Now I fix what I choose to fix. And when I'm done, I don't turn on the porch light, don't check my phone, don't wait for anyone. I just sit in the quiet I earned. Because some people don't deserve closure. They deserve to wonder. Forever.